In Germany, a quiet revolution has been hanging off apartment balconies for the better part of a decade. It looks unremarkable at first glance. Just a flat black panel bolted to a railing, a thin cable snaking through a window, and a plug pushed into an ordinary wall outlet. But that simple setup, known as Steckersolar in German or balcony solar across Europe, has been installed in somewhere between 3 and 4 million households. It is the cheapest form of solar power ever sold to consumers. It requires no electrician, no roof, no permits, and no contract with the local utility. And in 49 of the 50 United States, plugging one in is technically a violation of the electrical code. Tonight, we are going to examine how this technology actually works, why American regulators have spent decades treating it as a public safety threat, why Europeans have come to regard that same regulatory anxiety as overblown, and why the framework written for rooftop solar arrays in the 1980s is finally beginning to crack. The premise is almost insultingly simple. Sunlight hits a photovoltaic panel mounted on a balcony, fence, garage wall, or sliding glass door. The direct current produced by the cells flows down a short cable into a microinverter, a small weatherproof box, typically the size of a paperback book. That inverter converts the direct current into 120-volt alternating current, the same form of electricity flowing through every outlet in your house. Instead of being wired into a breaker panel by an electrician, the microinverter terminates in a standard plug. You push it into a wall socket. From that moment on, the electricity flowing out of the panel energizes your home circuit, and any appliance running on that circuit, the refrigerator, a laptop charger, the modem, draws its power from the panel first before pulling anything from the grid. Your utility meter, the one bolted to the side of your house, literally spins slower. A typical kit ranges from 600 to 1,200 watts of capacity, has no batteries, requires no roof drilling, and in countries where it is legal, it can be installed by one person in about an hour. The savings are not transformational. An 800-watt kit, positioned in reasonable sunlight, produces somewhere between $50 and $200 a year in offset electricity, depending on local rates and how much of the production happens while you are home using it. This is not free power. It is closer to shaving 10 to 25% off your electric bill. But the appeal is not the size of the savings. It is the access. For renters, for apartment dwellers, for anyone who has been told that going solar requires a $25,000 rooftop installation and a 30-page interconnection application, the balcony kit is the first version of solar that actually meets people where they live. And that is precisely what makes American regulators uneasy. Because the moment you push that plug into the wall, you have done something the United States electrical code does not know how to categorize, and there are at least 4 reasons why that matters. The first reason is backfeeding. When your panel produces more power than the appliances on that circuit are using at that exact moment, the excess current does not vanish. It flows backward through your home's panel and out onto the utility distribution lines that feed your neighborhood. From the utility's perspective, you have just become a generator. The National Electrical Code, specifically Section 705, governs how power sources interconnect with the grid, and it is exhaustive. It requires a formal interconnection agreement with your utility. It requires a dedicated breaker, not a shared one. It requires permanent warning labels at the service panel so that any future electrician knows that power can flow into the home from somewhere other than the meter. Consumer plug-in kits skip every single one of those requirements. There is no agreement, no dedicated circuit, no labels, just a cord and a socket. Under a literal reading of the code, that installation is unlawful in 49 states. The second reason is the one that puts a face on the safety argument. It is called islanding. When a storm knocks down a power line 2 streets over, utility crews assume that everything downstream of the break is dead. They have to. They climb poles, they handle conductors, and they perform their work on the assumption that nothing is feeding voltage into the line they are touching. But if your plug-in solar kit is still producing power and still pushing current onto the wires of your house, and your house is still connected to that downed line, you have created what engineers call an island, an energized pocket of grid in the middle of a supposedly dead network. Islanding has killed repair crews in documented cases around the world. The standards that govern proper grid-tied inverters, UL 1741 in the United States and IEEE 1547 internationally, require the inverter to detect the loss of grid frequency and disconnect itself within 2 seconds. Certified equipment does this reliably. The problem is that many of the cheap plug-in kits sold on Amazon and other online marketplaces, particularly imports from manufacturers without UL listings, simply do not carry that certification. A $200 UN-certified kit, sold to a homeowner who has no idea how to verify compliance, can quietly become a hazard to the lineman who shows up after the next windstorm. The third reason is the most technically subtle and, if you ask any working electrician, the most damning. It is called breaker masking. Every circuit in your home is protected by a breaker, typically rated at 15 or 20 amps. When current draw exceeds that rating, the breaker trips and cuts the circuit. This is the single mechanism that prevents your walls from catching fire when something goes wrong. But that breaker only measures current flowing through itself, from the panel into the circuit. Now imagine a plug-in inverter pushing 5 amps of solar power into the same circuit from the outlet end. An appliance load of 15 amps still runs. The wire in the wall is now carrying the full 15 amps. But the breaker only sees 10 amps passing through it, because 5 of those amps are being supplied locally by the inverter instead of being pulled from the panel. The breaker does not trip. The wire is overloaded. The insulation begins to heat up, slowly, invisibly, behind drywall. Electrical fires that start this way can smolder for hours before they are detected. This single phenomenon, breaker masking, is the reason almost every licensed electrician in North America opposes plug-in solar, regardless of how they feel about renewable energy in general. The fourth reason is one that the utilities and regulators tend not to say out loud, but it matters. Plug-in solar bypasses every revenue mechanism that grid-tied solar normally feeds into. There is no interconnection fee. There is no net metering paperwork. There is no opportunity for the utility to charge demand fees, capacity fees, or grid maintenance surcharges on the energy you are quietly generating. Every state that has revised its net metering policy in the last 2 years, California, Virginia, and Illinois among them, has done so in the direction of reducing what solar owners receive. Distributed generation threatens centralized utility revenue. Regulators who oversee these systems often serve utility business interests as much as they serve consumer safety. The technical objections to plug-in solar are real. The financial objections are real too, and they sometimes wear the same uniform. Now consider how Germany handled the same questions. In October of 2024, German federal law was amended to grant renters the explicit legal right to install balcony solar systems without landlord interference, capped at 800 watts of output per household. In December of 2025, the German standards body finalized DIN VDE V0126-95, the world's first dedicated technical standard for plug-in photovoltaic systems, addressing islanding, breaker compatibility, and inverter certification in one coherent document. Installation in Germany now requires only a registration with the local network operator, a process that takes about 10 minutes online. No permit, no electrician, no inspection. The average installed cost of a balcony kit sits between 400 and 600 euros. The result is a country with millions of these systems running quietly on apartment railings, no documented mass casualty events, no rash of electrical fires, and a body of operational data that makes the American posture look increasingly difficult to defend. The American turning point arrived more recently and more quietly. On March 25, 2025, the state of Utah passed House Bill 340, becoming the first jurisdiction in the United States to legalize plug-in solar systems at the state level. The law permits up to 1,200 watts per residence, with no utility approval required, no interconnection fee, and no permit cost. The trade-off is that homeowners cannot claim net metering credit for excess generation pushed back to the grid, but for a system this size, where most output is consumed in real time, that compromise is widely seen as acceptable. As of early 2026, 31 additional states have draft legislation in some stage of the legislative process modeled in part on the Utah framework. And in December of 2025, Underwriters Laboratories finalized UL 3700, the new American safety standard purpose-built for plug-in photovoltaic devices. UL 3700 directly addresses shock hazards, anti-islanding response time, and breaker masking, and it provides a certification pathway that did not previously exist on this continent. But there is a catch, and it is one any American viewer needs to understand before getting excited and opening Amazon. Even in Utah, where these systems are now legal, almost no UL 3700 certified kits are currently available for sale in the United States. The certification process takes time, and most manufacturers selling to American consumers today are still moving products that were never designed against this standard. Buying a non-certified imported kit and plugging it into your wall, even in a state where the category is now legal, remains a code violation because the specific equipment is not compliant. Beyond that, installation of any unauthorized electrical equipment can void your homeowner's insurance entirely. If a fire occurs anywhere in your home, even one unrelated to the solar kit, an insurance adjuster who finds non-compliant equipment in your service panel has grounds to deny the claim. Off-grid systems with batteries and no connection to your home's wiring remain legal almost everywhere and offer a safer entry point. Homeowner association covenants and local building codes still apply on top of state law. The advice here is simple. Do not buy, do not install, until you have verified your state's current statute and confirmed that the specific kit you are looking at carries UL 3700 certification. So, what do we have? We have a technology that is not really free. It is not exactly illegal either. It is over-regulated for what it actually is, a small consumer device that contributes a modest amount of power to the home it sits on. The cheapest, simplest, most accessible form of solar generation ever invented has been functionally blocked in the United States for more than a decade, not because the engineering does not work, but because a regulatory framework written for industrial rooftop arrays in the 1980s never anticipated a device you could buy on the internet and plug into a kitchen outlet. That framework is finally cracking under combined pressure from consumer demand, falling hardware costs, and the embarrassing visibility of European success. The next 2 years will determine whether the United States catches up to a technology its citizens can already see working on every German balcony, or whether the institutions built to gate that technology hold the line a little longer. Either way, the panel on the balcony is no longer a curiosity. It is a question the country is going to have to answer.